Out to this, if I could get my single back. The Pentagon warning Congress about the growing ties between Russia and China as Vladimir Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine continues.
During this conflict, Russia and China have grown closer together. China's diplomatic and political and moral support for Russia's illegal invasion has been notable and has assisted the Russians in their position and their domestic political position as well. It appears increasingly to be an uneven bromance, as you put it, in which Russia could become the junior partner.
Or is. Republican Congressman Marco Rubio is on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and joins us now. Senator, how significant is it that after all these decades, it was always the Soviets and the Russians who were the superior power, economic and military? That's not the case now.
Yeah. First of all, that's not the question you're supposed to ask me, according to
do you have my headshot on that card to see what I look like so you can remember?
No, I think it's an interesting look. What you're pointing to is that we're living in this moment, really, of historic shift. Like the world is literally changing. These are the things they're going to write history about. And clearly, China is not only the senior partner in that relationship, but China today is richer and more powerful than the Soviet Union ever was. And I think that's going to continue to be the case. So it requires us to reevaluate all our politics and everything we do geopolitically and how we respond to the world. And this is a new reality. I think it's not just it's China, but then you've got Russia obviously coming under their umbrella, Iran. You had an update here just a moment ago about Iran seizing a ship. That's in retaliation for a ship that is going to be seized because of sanctions against them. So you see this alliance of countries that are starting to line up underneath this Chinese world order. It won't be identical to the Cold War, but I will just say China is a much bigger threat to America than the Soviet Union ever was to America or the world.
And we got to get on the same page on that. And any legitimate presidential candidate's got to tell me their China plan. The Russian ego in the past has been too big to ever be a junior partner. Now they have no choice. Let's talk to another disturbing thing here in America. This 21-year-old decides he wants to be tough in a chat room and shows these teenagers classified information. We know the damage is significant that is now out there. We also know that two Air Force officers seem to have lost their job. What could you tell us about these commanders?
Well, I don't know about the commanders individually. It's great that there's some level of accountability and oversight of what was happening there, but ultimately it's obviously not enough to have prevented it. And you have to understand that even as I'm speaking to you now, there are hundreds of similarly situated people about the same age and background who have access to very important information. This important information is relevant for two things. The first is, if our adversaries can see it, whether they care about the information or not, it tells them how we got it. It tells them where you got it from, and it allows them to basically cut off accesses so we won't be able to find out stuff that's really even more important down the road. The other thing about these revelations, frankly, is that it really undermines the confidence of a lot of our countries that share intelligence with us or that are embarrassed by some of these. And the third thing that's really damaging is when people read these things, a lot of this is analysis. And again, I don't know which ones are credible. Maybe some were doctored, we don't know yet, and some maybe are not in the public domain yet. But a lot of it is analysis. It doesn't mean that's actually what's happening. It just means, this is what we're hearing from some people. Obviously, there might be some conflicting points of view that are offered in a follow-up product or whatever that is not part of the leak. So it creates a lot of confusion. The bottom line is it's not good. And I think the fundamental question is, how could someone of that background, at that age, with that rank, have access to something that could literally cause such strains in our relationship? And I think is much more damaging at this point than what the Biden administration has admitted it is.
And why it took so long for us to find out that it was out there.
Yeah.
Real quick, on the DeSantis-Disney battle, I know that former Governor Rick Scott, former Governor Jeb Bush, don't think Ron DeSantis should be taking on Disney. Where does Marco Rubio stand?
Well, I don't have a problem with taking on Disney. I think the fundamental question here is if what we're trying to fix is the fact that Disney had some arrangement that gave them governmental type powers, I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing. I think where it gets problematic in the eyes of some people is when you start creating the idea, and I'm not saying we're there yet as a state, but the idea that somehow, like if you run crossways with us politically, whoever's in charge, then you may wind up in the crosshairs of the legislature for political purposes to make a statement at you. So I don't think Disney's going to go anywhere. They've invested a lot of money and time, and I think that's going to find itself out. I do worry that if this happens too many times, businesses that are thinking about coming to Florida are saying, maybe we don't want to go there because if we get into a firestorm with them politically, they're going to come after our business. Again, a hypothetical issue, but I do think Disney is not different than any other company in the world, and I don't know why they should have government powers. That's something that was given to them a long time ago, and that's up for review every year. The legislature looks at it.
And Senator, I'd just love for the corporations just to stay out of this. They had no business weighing in on any type of bill.
Well, ask Budweiser.
Yeah, absolutely. Lastly, today is draft day. Day one, arguably the most exciting non-competitive event you'll ever have in sports. It's getting bigger every year. And there's so many good quarterbacks in this draft, including the very talented Anthony Richardson of the Florida Gators. Tell me about this guy.
Very talented. The guy's truly an athletic freak. I mean, in terms of the things he can do athletically. I think he started about a year and a half, maybe got 2 full years of starting. Had a change in coaching, but he needed to come out. He's very talented as an athlete. I think he can do a lot of the things that the modern game looks for in the quarterback position. I think if he winds up in the right place, that doesn't have to start him right away, that gets good quarterback coaching, and that builds a system around him, I think he can have early success. I really do, because the guy does a lot of things to extend drives with his legs and just athletically. He's very talented.
Senator, do you have a monitor there?
Do I have a monitor?
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Go look down, because you used to coach football. We have some football players out on the square, and I know you're probably good at spotting talent. Are you seeing any prospective NFL players or Division I players out there on Fox Square? Because they're excited about draft day.
Well, I need to get those guys. I mean, I wasn't able to see if you had them backpedaling. We got to see how their hips move. Are they stiff in the hips and what have you? And it's tough to tell how big some of those kids are going to be. But, it's never wrong to dream.
Absolutely. You work in the world's most deliberative body. You would not make a commitment to any of this talent, but you do see potential, and you give us the drills to run them through. Next year, this time, we will have them in drills on Take Your Kid to Work Day and have them break up. Senator Marco Rubio, thanks so much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.